Hey everyone, welcome back to Milk Drunk. Today's episode is all about something that all of us need, but every family struggles with at some point. That's right, I'm talking about that beautiful, magical little thing called sleep that can be hard to come by when kids transition from crib to bed and beyond, not just when they're infants. So if your toddler and or preschool age kids are making your evenings miserable or keeping you up all night, our guest today has got you. Please welcome to the show Certified Pediatric Sleep Consultant, innovator, mother, and the founder and CEO of Awesome Little Sleepers, Jessica Berk. Jessica helps families all over the world solve their sleep challenges, and she is the only sleep coach specializing in the toddler preschool age range. Jessica is the creator of the hugely popular toddler sleep training course, Sleep Tight Without a Fight, which gave Amy Schumer her nights back. We'll discuss. And Jessica's tried and tested course, The Rest Method, which is trademarked, has helped thousands of families learn how to peacefully get their kids to bed on time and sleeping 10 to 12 hours each night with no wake-ups. It's so nice to meet you, Jessica. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate it. I know sleep is such a huge issue that every family and parent deals with, something that I'm dealing with now at every stage. So I can't wait to dive in and learn about your methods and any tips and tricks that you may have. But first off, you're a mom of two. You have two daughters. How old are they?
So my oldest daughter, thank you for having me, by the way. That was a wonderful intro. And I'm so excited to be here talking to you. So yeah, I've got two little girls who really aren't little anymore. My youngest is 11 and my oldest just turned 14, which
oh my gosh.
So old because I kind of feel like I'm 14.
No, seriously. Oh my God. I can't imagine having a teenager nowadays. Is it just wild? I'm sure it's so wildly different from when you were a teenager, obviously, but
yeah,
oh my gosh.
I think that's the thing that's so crazy. It's they're just growing up in a world that's so different from the world that I grew up in. There's just so many different challenges and things to deal with. So yeah, it's a whole new world. And it's, with teenagers, it's kind of minute by minute. It's you never know what you're going to get, but it's kind of a sweet time because it's in some ways she's kind of, wants to push me away, but then she still wants to snuggle and hold my hand sometimes. So
Aww.
Kind of in between. So it's sweet.
Well, I love to hear that. That's the stage that I'm most dreading. So I hope it's not too bad once it comes, but we'll see. But obviously this is a Bobby podcast. So we ask everyone how their feeding journeys were. And, just curious, do you remember anything about your feeding journeys with your girls? I know it was a while ago, but what was that like?
Yeah, it definitely was a while ago. And I was thinking about this before I was coming on here. And I think the one thing that everybody should know that's hopefully reassuring is that it all does kind of become a blur. Mm-hmm. So at every stage of parenting, we always have challenges and we have things that feel awesome, but it always changes. So I think just knowing that with your parenting journey, things are going to ebb and flow is important. With my girls, so I nursed both of my girls. My first daughter, I think we got to almost a year with nursing, but we had supplemented with formula and stuff. I'd gone back to work, so I was pumping. And so my husband would do bottles in the middle of the night. So we kind of traded off that way. And then my second daughter, I think we only made it to 6 months because she got her teeth. Once the biting started, I was like, I'm out.
Right.
I can't handle it.
Yeah. That's basically when I stopped too. She started teething kind of early at 5 months and we stopped around 7 months. But how important is feeding when it comes to sleep, whether it be an infant or a toddler? I just tried to make her as full as possible so she would sleep as long as possible. But is that just the general philosophy of, feeding and sleep?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, yes, obviously you want your kids to be, well fed so that they can get a big chunk of sleep overnight. That's definitely important. There used to be some myths out there that kids who started solid food would sleep longer than kids who were solely breastfed, but I believe that's all been debunked. So, if you're a nursing mom and your kid's older than 4 or 5 months old, they should still, if they're healthy and growing, they should still have the ability to get you a good, 8-9 hours of sleep.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I feel like every baby's so different and what works for them may not work for anyone else. So our daughter, she slept so well the first 6 months. And I guess we just lucked out. I don't know why. I didn't do anything special, but she was just naturally a good sleeper. Teething started and it was just kind of became a nightmare. But she's doing much better now. But I would love to get into some questions later on. But I want to get into how you got started in this career. Is this something that you always set out on doing, or did you happen to just stumble upon it when you had kids?
Kind of both in some ways. I think I always knew that I would love to do something on my own, but I didn't know how you would do that or what that would look like or what that would be. So I did kind of end up stumbling into it. So when I had my kids, we were actually living out in California, and I was part of a new moms group, and they brought in a sleep coach to talk to us. And at this point, I think my daughter was maybe 5 months old, and I was hanging on to my sanity by a thread because she had not slept. And I had just always kind of heard they'll sleep when they're tired. So I was kind of trying to use her cues and just nap her and sleep her whenever and try to rest when she was resting. And then the sleep coach came to talk to us. And I mean, my jaw was on the floor. I was wait, I can try to put some structure to her day. I could try to time naps and get them to lengthen and get them to kind of consolidate so we could have a predictable sleep pattern for her day, which means we could then leave the house at certain times and have kind of a semblance of a routine. And so that was amazing. And so I got her on a schedule right away. And I was a new person. I'm oh my gosh, I understand how people can have kids. Because I swear when I was not sleeping, I was oh my God, it's not okay.
Yeah.
So then I was diehard, such a fan of getting your kids to be great sleepers. And then it was another couple years until I ended up getting certified on my own. It wasn't until my younger daughter ended up turning 3. That's when my whole sleep really got bad because I had always had my kids be great sleepers when they were babies. And then all of a sudden she moves out of the crib, and that's when all hell broke loose for me. So that's when my business was kind of born then.
Interesting. So what are some good factors that you instill in a good sleeper? What is the foundation of a good sleeper for toddlers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's some things that you can really do at any age. And I think the most important thing to think about is how much sleep, based on how old your child is, how much sleep should they be getting so that you really are educated and kind of have that benchmark. So you know kind of what you're striving for. Kids that I work with who are ages 2.5 up to 8, we're looking for them to be sleeping 10 to 14 hours overnight, 10 to 13 hours probably in that range. And then if they nap, that would be additional. So you really need to know how much sleep you're shooting for. And then having a really good consistent routine is so important. So once you kind of know when your kids should be going to bed, when they should be waking up, when they should be napping, really working to keep that consistent. So building your day around their sleep needs, just like you would around their feeding needs. You know that they're going to need to eat. You're not going to try to skip a feeding. So don't try to skip a nap, so just really making sleep a priority and being consistent with it is so important. And that's at any age, even for us. They say the best way to go to sleep is at the same time every night and wake up at the same time in the morning, 7 days a week. That's
interesting. Well, I've never heard that.
Yeah.
And clearly I'm doing it wrong.
We're supposed to be doing that.
Supposed to be, yeah.
I was going to add one more thing, which is important. Even you can start this at any time once your kids are 4 or 5 months old, all the way through their childhood, which is what I call making sure that your kids are a solo sleeper, meaning they can fall asleep without any of these quote, sleep crutches.
Okay.
Sometimes we parents, with the best intentions, give to our kids to help them sleep. So some examples of sleep crutches are nursing kids all the way to sleep, or giving them a bottle in their crib, or rocking them until they're asleep, or, laying down with them. If we're talking toddlers and preschoolers, laying in bed with them until they fall asleep. Because what happens in those cases is kids really start to need those things in order to fall asleep. And as kids grow up, it becomes, them really needing the parents, right? They need to hold your hand. They need you to be rubbing their back. And so as you know, as much as you can encourage your kids to be independent sleepers, that's going to like set them up for the best sleep habits. And you can start that as early as 4 or 5 months old.
Okay. You mentioned that you work with children ages 2.5 to 8. That number scared me because I just assumed, I don't know, once a kid hits 5, they just sleep through the night magically. So 8 was like, whoa, that's much later than I thought. But is it because of those or a lack of setting that routine early on that they don't sleep through the night the older that they get generally?
Well, I'm so glad that you said that. And I'm sorry to surprise you with the 8-year-old number, but it's true because what happens is everything that's going on with our kids' sleep and their sleep routine and how they fall asleep, it just becomes a habit. And the longer it goes on for, the more difficult it can be to break that, right? Like your kid gets used to you laying in their bed every night while they fall asleep or sleeping with you when they're 2 or 3. Why, when they're 4, will they just say, bye, mom, I'm going to go sleep on my own? Like that just doesn't happen naturally because they start to get tied to it. I mean, you've made yourself an integral part of their sleep process. So like they don't know how to sleep without you because they never have.
Yeah,
So
I mean, that makes sense.
yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit of a process to like unwind that, and it's totally doable, but there really isn't a time where it magically happens. And I think it's important to point this out because a lot of times parents will think, and this is a lot of parents come to me when they have a toddler and they're pregnant with their second.
Yeah.
The realization like, oh crap, like my toddler is kind of sleeping like a newborn, like waking up every few hours. Like, how am I going to actually have a newborn? And so a lot of parents think that the sleep struggles are just maybe a phase that will stop, when when they're in kindergarten, they'll
Right.
sleep and they'll stop sleeping with us or stop waking up or whatever. But the truth is there's no magical time. It's not just a phase. It's a phase that will end once parents, make a decision to change it, because I've had people with 12-year-olds who still sleep with them. So it could be something that happens where a kid wants to go to a sleepover. They're 9, they want to go to their first sleepover, but then they realize they're scared to because they don't know how to fall that, or sleepaway camp,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I've never considered any of these things. I'm gonna get your method as soon as I get home today and prepare. But speaking of, you trademarked the rest method, which is amazing. Congratulations. I know trademarking things is not easy to do, but how did you develop your specific method for sleep?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So like I said, I kind of started, my business really started out of my own need. So when my own kid started, not sleeping and wanting me to lay with her and like waking up all night, and I'm like, oh God, like what's happening? This, you've always been a great sleeper. I ended up getting certified as a sleep coach, really just to like solve my own problems, honestly. And then once I realized I could, I was like, oh, I can serve other families and do this. And that's when I started Awesome Little Sleepers. And then I worked one-on-one with families for many years. And about 3 years ago, I decided, you know what, like if I could put this whole thing into an online course that people could go through on their own at their own pace without needing me, then I'd be able to serve so many more families. So that's when I came up with, okay, what exactly am I teaching? So I came up with a name for it to make it easy through. So it's the REST method, which is an acronym. So it's REST. And I break it down. I say it's like the 4 pieces of awesome sleep that you need to like know how to optimize each of those pieces. And then sleep is easy.
What does REST stand for?
Yeah, so it's an acronym. So the letter R stands for the right sleep schedule. So, which is, I mentioned this before, but like how much sleep your kid needs, when they should be napping, when they should be going to bed. E stands for excellent bedtime routine. And this is so important, especially with older kids, like not so much with babies, but once you have, a 3, 4, 5-year-old, they are opinionated. They want what they want when they want it. So the excellent bedtime routine is all about teaching parents like how to work with their kids to set up a routine that the kid is going to actually enjoy and has like an ownership in. And then you kind of make them the boss of the bedtime routine instead of the mom or the parent always like trying to just like kind of be the drill sergeant through the whole thing. The letter S stands for solo sleep strategy. So this is kind of what we were talking about before too, which is making sure your kid can fall asleep without any help from anybody else. And there's kind of many different sleep training strategies out there. So the course that I've developed provides you with options. So it's never going to be the same for any family, right? Just like feeding. There's not one right answer. Sometimes it's a combination of a number of different things. So my course teaches multiple different strategies, and it kind of guides parents, kind of like a choose your own adventure book, to like decide what's going to work best for like their family, their child. And so it's really customizable to like every parenting style.
Okay.
And then the letter T stands for T's a reward. So just kind of bringing in some little rewards, using praise to help jumpstart new good sleep behaviors. And then it's all about like radical consistency and sticking to the plan.
Okay. So with your method, could I attribute some, or could I put into practice some of those methods with my daughter? Like, I know you specialize with toddlers, but is it a different like strategy when you're dealing with infants?
It's not necessarily different. I say that the biggest piece that makes my rest method and my sleep course so different is that it really takes into account where kids are developmentally. So like with your daughter, she's young, and so she doesn't have an opinion. She's going to pretty much stay put. The way I teach it is really about trying to make parents and kids like feel like a team, like they're working together as opposed to working against each other. And the stage where you are in your parenting journey, like you're kind of just, your daughter is going to stay where you put her, and she doesn't really have a say in things. So it's just a little different in that way.
Okay.
It just makes the older kids, like, you just have to learn how to talk to them a little bit differently to try to get their buy-in, because
Gotcha.
it's
Yeah.
the process so much easier when
right now she has no opinion. So I'm not, it's not as much of a fight, I guess.
that won't last very long.
I know. I'm mentally preparing for it every day.
Like the stage you're in, like sleep is disrupted from all kinds of milestones. Like you were saying, teething, and the next thing, crawling or walking or, pulling up, all of those things are sleep disruptors as well, just in a different way.
Right.
The kids that I specialize in, the disruption is their strong-willed personalities is kind of what the disruption is.
Right. Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, always changing.
Yeah. So I saw that you have something called the mean mommy bedtime effect. Can you explain what that is?
So this is the persona that every toddler parent, maybe even with your daughter her age, that you find yourself at times turning into what I call mean mommy, which is like all of a sudden, you snap, you lose your temper, you behave in ways that you are not proud of. I think we've all shed tears over moments like this in our own parenting journey where we're like, oh, that was the wrong thing to do. Like that was me having my own temper tantrum, taking it out on my kid, and it feels awful. And so my whole strategy is like trying to avoid you having to turn into mean mommy by putting the tools and structure in place so that bedtime feels peaceful and it's not that fight, because so much of this mean mommy stuff comes out at the end of the day when we're all tired anyway. And, you're looking towards this bedtime routine and you're like thinking, oh my God, how long is this going to take tonight? You kind of already starts off on a bad foot if sleep has been a challenge for a while. I mean, mean mommy doesn't feel good for the parents, doesn't feel good for the kids. And honestly, it can actually make the sleep problems worse, because any like attention that we give our kids is going to help fuel their behaviors. So like if your child throws a temper tantrum in Target and, you stop everything you're doing and you're pouring all of your attention on them, trying to get them to stop having the temper tantrum, that may keep it going for longer than if you could step away and like ignore it. So even negative attention, which is the mean mommy coming out, can actually start to make bedtime worse, because if you're spending a lot of time arguing with your kid or losing your temper, guess what? They're still getting to stay up late. I mean, it's not really fun for anyone, but they're still kind of winning.
Yeah. Interesting. I've felt the mean mommy effect just a few times so far, but I'm hoping I can keep her at bay for as long as possible.
It's hard. And there's no, I mean, it's all like we're learning. Like this is our first time being a mom
Yeah.
too, so we're all learning.
Is there a time when you encourage solo sleeping, or is that something that you just, as a part of the routine, like, so our daughter, she co-sleeps with us right now. She was doing great being a solo sleeper. And then it just became her wanting to sleep with us. And that's how she sleeps through the night now, in bed with us. When she's alone, she always wakes up at least once. And it's like clockwork around 1 a.m. She always wakes up. So is there a time when you encourage, to have them at least sleeping by themselves by a certain age?
Yeah, well, I think it is totally up to every family to set up whatever sleep situation that works best for everybody. So I feel like just like Bobby I'm not here to say there's one way of sleeping that's better than the
Yeah.
other. It's really like whatever works best for your family. So if you guys are co-sleeping and that's what you guys want to do and everybody is sleeping, then like that's totally fine. So I'm not here to say like everyone should sleep in separate places. I'm just here to say if you want to be sleeping in separate places, if you're not,
Yeah.
but generally, I mean, once kids are over about 4 or 5 months old, as long as they are, growing and healthy, I mean, typically they should be able to sleep through the night at that point. But in terms of solo sleep, I mean, you can even start a little bit younger than that with some like super, super gentle methods. But, kids are going to get used to the conditions that we provide for them. So if you think of it that way, I mean, there's plenty of kids who don't have any screen time. There's kids who grow up vegetarian. There's kids who grow up in all kinds of different, situations than, maybe my kids are growing up in or your kids are growing up in. So it's all different. And so it's all about parents really setting the boundaries and setting up the sleep situation they want for their family. So if your daughter was, waking up and that was disruptive for you, and this is a better solution and everyone's happy with it, then that's great. But if there comes a time where you're like, you know what, like, I would rather not have her in my bed. I'd rather have her sleeping in her own space. Then that's the time for you to encourage that independent sleep.
Okay.
So it's really whenever you are ready is the best time to get started.
Okay. I mean, I felt ready, but it's just a matter of us putting it into practice. Her dad, my boyfriend, he was away for a month shooting this movie, and he just got back. So, he wants to be around her as much as possible. So I feel like she's going to be sleeping with us for a couple of weeks at least. But we did talk about putting her in her own room because she's never been in her own room. We have like this little alcove, I guess, in our bedroom where we keep her. But yeah, I'm really nervous about when we put her in her nursery because so many things. But I'm looking forward to, putting it into action and even using your guide as a resource. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think the best thing, I mean, the best advice in that kind of situation, certainly for you and your boyfriend to be on the same page. Like that is so important for parents to really want the same, to be on the same page with what they want. Because something that I see with families a lot is some inconsistency between parents. Like, let's say it's the dad who's like, well, I don't really care if like they sleep with us sometimes. And the mom is like, no, like I never want them sleeping with us. And so if it's mom's night, she's doing everything she can to get her kid to stay in their own room. But then, the next night, let's say dad has nighttime duty and he's like, well, whatever, just come sleep with us. Well, the problem there is think of it from the child's perspective. Like, having such an inconsistent situation like confuses the child, right? So they're like, well, why can't I come sleep with you? Like dad let me come sleep with you last night, And so you really being on the same page just makes everything so much easier because inconsistency is kids don't understand sometimes, they really don't. They get used to the routine and the structure that like we set for them. So the more consistent we can be with that, just when it comes to everything, not only sleep, but I mean like discipline, like feeding rules, like rules for getting dressed, like any like structure routine you have in your family, like the more consistent that y'all both are with it, the easier it is for her to understand, like, here's what we're doing, here's what's going on.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Being on the same page, it makes parenting easier for sure.
Yeah.
There's no need to complicate it. It's already hard enough. So I know you said that it's all about what is working for you, but are there any just hard do's and don'ts that you have when it comes to sleep training?
Hard do's and don'ts. I don't know. I mean, probably not. I mean, I'd say with older kids, it's just because it's so different for every family, and there's so many
Right.
different kind of strategies out there. And I encourage people to do what's going to work best for them. But the other thing, it has to work two ways. It has to be work for the parents, like parenting style. It has to be a strategy that parents feel like they can follow through with, but it also has to match the personality of the child. If
Mm.
you have parents that really want to have a really gentle, slow approach, and a kid who just is going to railroad right through that and like turn every little gentle thing into a game, then that may not be the most effective strategy for the kid. So you
Mhm.
kind of have to be realistic about the situation you're dealing with. And with older kids, especially, I think it's really important to involve the kids. And so that's all my strategy is all about that. So involve the kid, give them some sense of control, some choices through the process so they feel like they're being heard. And then, when it comes to changes that parents want to make overnight, kids may not like that, which is fine.
Mhm.
But I really encourage parents to role play, like whatever changes they're going to make with the kids, role play it. And again, I'm talking about 3, 4, 5 year olds, right?
Yeah.
This for your 1 year old, but role playing it with kids so that kids know what to expect. And that does not mean that kids aren't going to cry and be upset, right? So if you're saying like, okay, here's what's going to happen. If you get up tonight, mommy's going to walk you back to your room. And if you get up a second time, mommy's going to walk you back to your room. There's no more sleeping with mommy. Your kid may not like that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to feel different. That's going to feel weird. But if you role play it, what it at least shows you is that you've fully explained it to your child. Your child understands in the light of day what's going on and what to expect. And then at night, you're just following through with that. And then in the morning, you can circle back and have the empathy and the praise for the things that they did well. I know that felt really different last night, buddy, but you did a great job. And then again, back to the consistency. So, night one is always the toughest when you're making changes. Night two should be better. And then onward from there, the more consistent you are, the faster the process can be.
Yeah. I mean, consistency seems to be the overarching theme here. So, I mean, consistency pays off in all aspects of life, including sleep. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and this is one thing I love, like one good thing about social media. I think these days, like social media gets like a bad rap for so many negative things, but I do think one good thing is that I do feel like parents are a little more comfortable asking for help. Do you feel that way?
100%. I mean, I know people can get really judgmental on social media, but I find that, have you heard of Reddit? I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I find a lot of like things that I'm scared to ask on social or just discuss on social. I'll go to Reddit because, it's anonymous and it's a total no judgment zone over there. And parents are very candid about their experiences and whether they think they'll be perceived in a bad light or not, they're just sharing what their journey is looking like at the time or what their problem or issue is. And I think Reddit is obviously seek professional help if you need it. But, if you just want just to see where everyone else is at, I think Reddit it's been very helpful for me in feeling less shame around certain things. But I definitely think people overall look out to social media for advice or, just to see what other people are doing, what's working for them, just to try out, different methods for different things. So, yeah, I think it's obviously there's a lot of bad things that come with social media, but I think the good outweighs the bad overall.
Yeah, I think there's just more of a move towards like vulnerability. I mean, like
Mhm.
you look at Instagram, like it used to be these like curated feeds, everything is perfect. And I think now there's such a move, at least in like the mom space or
I
in,
agree.
my little vacuum that I've set up for myself over there. It's, it seems to be much more people like keeping it real and talking about how difficult things are. And which I think is good. I think it's good because I think, especially when it comes to feeding or sleeping, like if you need help and you ask for it, the best thing to do is have a plan, And so I love being in the position of being that expert where, especially if you have like parents who don't know what to do. And a lot of times it's the dad looking to the mom, like, what should we do? And the mom's like, well, just because I had this kid doesn't mean I know I'm supposed to do.
Exactly.
So then being able to look to like a third party, okay, this is the plan. Like we're on this plan and here's why we're doing it. Here's what we're doing. So I think that's helpful.
Yeah, I do too. So you worked with Amy Schumer. That's super cool. And she posted a really nice review of your program and how it worked with her kids and how it gave them their nights back. They were able to, sleep again finally. That's really amazing. It did really well. Did she find you on Instagram? Is that like how most people find you?
I think it's how most people find me, but she wasn't exactly sure how she found me. So I don't know if it was someone like on her staff, or I'm not sure if it was her husband, or I don't know. I never figured out how she found me, which I hate because I feel like everybody asks me that. How'd she find you? And, so who knows? I don't exactly know, but it was really cool that she reached out, and I'm so glad I was able to help her get her son into like a great, efficient bedtime routine so that he could that on time. And yeah, it was a wonderful, really easy, quick process. They did a great job.
So when I was on my way over here, I was looking at your site and saw that you have master classes and like one-on-one coaching. So do you recommend people try out the master class first before diving into coaching? Or is there, a guide you recommend?
Yeah. So I have a free toddler sleep masterclass, and that is a great introduction to the rest method and my teaching style. And I think it really helps families understand if they're in a situation where they need some help. Like it kind of uncovers lots of different situations that could be going on and what the problems might be. So I think it helps people identify like, okay, this program could really help me. So that is something people can sign up for that. It's free. And the website for that is toddlersleepmasterclass.com. So if you go and sign up for a time, you can join that class for free. And that's really a good introduction to my sleep course. And then my sleep course is called Sleep Tight Without a Fight. And it's an online do-it-yourself course. So it walks you through all the steps of the rest method. And it has you like, this is kind of the choose your own adventure part where it's kind of like, if this, then that. And so you go through this whole course and you're like building your own custom sleep plan.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And so everyone's experience going through the course will be a little different, right? Because it depends on your child, what problems you're trying to solve, how you're going to solve them. It's really kind of customizable that way. And then it's designed to take 2 weeks. Like once you figure out your sleep plan and you start implementing it, it only takes about 2 weeks to get your kid going to bed easily and sleeping 10 to 12 hours a night.
Oh, wow. That's
amazing.
So
that's my sleep course. And then that's a paid course. And then I also have one-on-one coaching as well, which is a little different. So with the sleep course, that is something you go through on your own, and it's really DIY. And you can always add on a call with the sleep coach to ask questions or whatever. Have like a support community where you can go and ask questions and talk to other families in the program. One-on-one coaching it's much more hand-holding, where it's like you're talking to a sleep coach daily as you're working through the process. So that's something we offer.
I don't know if you'll know the answer to this, but do you find that people seek you out when it's more of a last resort situation, like they're just at their wits' end and they need help? Or is it more preventative, just getting mentally prepared for this next phase of development?
I mean, some people definitely come to it trying to be prepared, like before they move their kid to a bed and out of the crib. If they're really worried about sleep, I think people do enroll in the course to kind of just get some tips. But I think in most cases, people are it's kind of a last resort. Also, I feel like, if you Google sleep training or like get my 3-year-old to sleep in a bed, you could read to the ends of the internet,
Yeah.
And so I think people feel like, but I could just Google the answer. And so people waste, and I hear this all the time from families, they just waste months and months and months just like reading a blog and trying this and this
Yeah.
and that and trying to put everything together, but there's nowhere to ask questions and that didn't work. So then you move on to the next thing and you never stick with anything and it just feels confusing. So I think people do sit, unfortunately, and spin in that like hopeless kind of Google feeling
Yeah.
before they decide, okay, like it's actually time to invest in a solution from an expert that's like literally mapped out within 2 hours of watching this course. I can like have the answers and then we can be done.
Yeah. Do you know if this is something that's prioritized in other countries or like sleep train or I don't know if it's called sleep training, but like a sleep specialist or,
I know that there's definitely cultural differences depending on where
Mhm.
you go. I mean, there's certain countries where sleep coaching is more covered under insurance than it is here.
Mm.
So I think is it in Australia or Canada? I think they have some provisions where it's almost like you have your pediatrician, you have your sleep coach, like it kind of like
Oh,
comes,
wow.
you get access to all of these things as part of
Yeah.
the plan, which is really cool. Like we don't have anything like that in the United
No.
States, fortunately,
Yeah.
which we totally should have. But certainly in other countries, different cultures have different ways of wanting to sleep. So yeah, it's kind of different everywhere.
Speaking of that, we want to prioritize paid leave here, and it's something that's really important to us. So, do you remember what your maternity leave was like, or if you were able to get maternity leave at the time?
Yeah. So as I remember it, so I had my kids when we lived in California, but I'm originally from Atlanta. So all of my friends were having kids like in the Southeast. And I remember my benefits being way better than theirs. So again, this was like 11, 14 years ago. So I don't know if it's still the same, but I think I want to say 3 or 4 months of paid leave, and then maybe another 3 months or so of like a partial paid leave. And I think I had the rest of all the way up to 12 months of job security. So my first daughter, I think I took maybe 7 months. And my second one, I think I took 5 months.
Ideally, I would love everyone to get at least a year. That's like my dream scenario, but I know everything here is just so backwards. I wish they prioritized childcare and, improving parents' lives as well. But
Yes, I know. But I mean, honestly, my friends in the Southeast, I think they had 3 months and like that was it.
yeah,
And I mean, at 3 months, like your kid is not sleeping. Like
no,
really unlikely that you're getting any decent amount of sleep. So then you're sending your kid off to daycare and you're trying to go to work like a zombie. It's not
yeah,
going to make sense. It's not good for anybody.
no, not at all. Mm-mm. I wanted to ask, are there any sleep myths that you wanted to debunk?
Ooh, sleep myths.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think one of them is that we kind of touched on this earlier, but that like, kids will just grow out of it. I think that is I mean, sure, in some cases, but I would say pretty unlikely in most cases, especially when it comes to kids needing parents for sleep. It's like we were saying before, like it's really just a habit that gets stronger over time. So it's not like
Hmm.
you just stop.
Yeah.
So certainly sleep is not going to be perfect every night. And certainly milestones and things are going to like give you little hardships, but it shouldn't last for more than a couple weeks. If something is weird for more than a couple weeks, you're probably into like starting a bad habit territory. I think the other thing, I don't know if this is a myth, but this is what I hear people say a lot. One is like, maybe my kid just doesn't need that much sleep. And I think it's only something like 1% of the population has really truly has sleep needs that are different from the norm. So no, most kids don't need 7 hours of sleep a night. I mean, my 11-year-old sleeps for 10 hours a night. Like
Oh, wow.
they need a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
So I think people sometimes say like, oh, maybe my kid just doesn't need a lot of sleep. And that's, I don't think accurate. Oh, I know the other thing that I hear from parents. They say something like, maybe my kid's just too stubborn to sleep. Maybe my kid's just too stubborn
Huh.
to go to bed. A lot of like kind of blaming the child's like personality
Yeah.
problems, which I do not love that. Certainly your child is not too stubborn to learn to sleep well.
And lastly, I wanted to ask, since you work with so many parents, are there any parenting hacks that you've learned or that you have personally?
In terms of parenting hacks,
It doesn't have to pertain to sleep either.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I've given you all my good sleep advice.
Yeah.
I think just so important to remember that, all the good things and all the bad things about each phase, they just come and go. Like it's always changing. And so the best thing to do is, don't beat yourself up over anything. It's always going to change. So appreciate the good things while you have them. So I think that's the best. Just know that, don't beat yourself up and appreciate what's good.
Yeah. The biggest lesson I've learned so far is to really just take things as they come. Just take it a day at a time. Hardly anything is in your control anymore. So it's no use in forcing that.
And trust your gut, trust your gut. It's super important.
Yeah. Well, my daughter is very lively right now and she wants to take over the podcast. I think I'm going to wrap it up. But Jessica, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate your time and just all your insight that you have about sleep. I know I'm taking away so much from this particular episode, probably more than any episode that we've had so far. And I'm sure it's going to be helpful to so many parents out there. Before you go, please plug everything. Tell us where we can find you, your website, all of that.
Yeah. So I hang out the most over on Instagram. So I'm at Awesome Little Sleepers. And then if people are interested in taking my free toddler sleep masterclass, they can sign up for a time at toddlersleepmasterclass.com. That's a great way to learn more about my methodology and everything like that. So that's a great place to go as well.
Awesome.
And then of course, my website, awesomelittlesleepers.com. Let's see, I've got a YouTube channel and I've got a podcast. So you find
what's your podcast?
It's called How to Get Your Toddler to Sleep in a Big Kid Bed.
Nice. Oh, I love that.
Very straightforward.
Yeah, straightforward. I love that.
Really like short 7-10 minute episodes solving specific problems.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. I love that. You're everywhere. So that's really awesome. Well, thank you so much. You were such a pleasure to talk to. And that's another episode of Milk Drunk, guys. I'll see you next week. Bye.